I'm about halfway through my first coffee of the day. First, because I definitely will be having a second, maybe not a third. If you're my doctor and you're listening, she just told me I need to stop drinking so much caffeine at least past 2. Well, it ain't 2 o'clock yet, is it? All right. So I Google ADHD a lot. I probably Google it 4 times a week. And it's always at 12 or 1 a.m. because I can't sleep or I just woke up and I can't fall asleep. But now I'm doing it at 11 a.m. instead of 11 p.m. Also, I'm going to make you guys do it with me because I have a lot of questions. I just got diagnosed with ADHD a year ago and I'm confused all the time. So let's Google ADHD together. This is my first episode. I'm really excited. I filmed a practice episode. You will not be seeing that. It will not see the light of day. But yeah, it's my first episode. So I'm just going to Google, start off, what is ADHD? Because I know what ADHD is to me. I know it's very unique to the individual. Specifically, ADHD in women is very understudied. I think that's what draws me to Googling ADHD every night at midnight is that I am so confused all the time. And because of that lack of medical insight, I have a lot of problems trying to feel understood. And so Googling these questions like, what is ADHD? How does ADHD affect women? Why am I having a meltdown right now at this very moment? Um, those are all things that I find myself Googling. What are the weird questions that you find yourself Googling at night? I want to know. What are you guys wondering about ADHD? What's your Google search history? Let me know. Um, so as I type in what is ADHD into Google, I see a lot of things about ADHD in kids, which is not the best thing for me to see. I am a grown woman. I want to see ADHD in adults. Here we are. ADHD in adults. So this is from the National Institute of Mental Health. What is ADHD? So it's attention deficit hyperactive disorder. It's also called those two are kind of interchangeable, especially nowadays. It's a developmental disorder marked by persistent symptoms of inattention or hyperactivity and impulsivity. And these symptoms interfere with executive functioning. So I'm just going to Google, start off, what is ADHD? Because I know what ADHD is to me. I know it's very unique to the individual. ADHD is going to be very different according to the individual who has it. My ADHD is not going to look anything like yours or anything like my sister's. But some of the symptoms that we will universally struggle with is difficulty paying attention to details. We either hyper focus in on a detail and then miss everything else, or we just miss everything completely. We also have trouble following instructions, whether because the instructions just aren't specific enough or they are verbal instructions. A lot of people with ADHD, we tend to learn visually and we like to have things written out in front of us. You can't tell me, oh, drive down the street and take a left. I need Google Maps to tell me where I am. I need to see where I am. We also will struggle with hyperactivity, excessive activity, or restlessness. So we'll be squirming, fidgety. Like if I'm in class, I can't just sit still. I'm either picking at my nails or I'm bouncing my foot or I'm looking all over the place. But I also struggle with the opposite of that. I really struggle, actually, my ADHD. I realized I had it because I could not get out of bed and I wasn't doing any activity. I didn't have that executive functioning to start doing anything. So we're unable to sit still, but also unable to start. There's no in between. It's either one extreme or the other. Some other things that we have is trouble with self-control and impulsivity. So, the very basic example of this is interrupting conversations or maybe spending too much money online when you're shopping. Ever since I was little, I was very daydreamy, always looking out the window. I lose everything. I make these careless mistakes that I feel like I don't have to make. All of these things can make life so hard because ADHD is a chronic condition, and these symptoms that we experience, it changes every day. Like one day I'll be super excited and ready to go, and I want to do cartwheels down the hallway. And then the next day, I just can't get out of my bed. So, those are a few things that generally ADHDers struggle with. But as we go through this podcast, I want to get into specifics of that. I want to talk about how ADHD can go unseen, but still have so many effects on us that are honestly sometimes debilitating to me. One time I told my sister, I was like, ADHD is ruining my life, and I'm terrified. And she laughed so loud in my face, which honestly, humbling, and honestly, I needed that because there's really no reason I needed to be that existential because ADHD is also a superpower, or it can be. You know, that's what my therapist says. She's like, Georgia, ADHD is a superpower. It doesn't have to be impossible. It doesn't have to be. You like, does anyone else just constantly feel guilty about their ADHD? Every time I'm in bed and I can't seem to get the executive functioning to start my day and I can't get to class, I'm in bed crying because I feel so awful, so guilty about these things, even though there's a reason for it and it's not my fault. I remember I was having a mental breakdown and I called my dad. I do that a lot. um, and he was like, Georgia, if you were having a coughing fit or if you were nauseous and you left the room because you were coughing too much and you didn't want to distract people, or you left because you were nauseous and you had to throw up, you would not be feeling this guilty. And he said, your anxiety and your ADHD is no different from that. No one can tell you that you are not allowed to excuse yourself for your own chronic condition that you have no control over. That's one thing that I'm really trying to get into my head is that I don't control my ADHD. It is a chronic condition that I was born with. And it's not something that I can take away. It's something that is a part of me. You know, I made that joke in my trailer. I don't know if you heard it, but I was like, this is the podcast where I make ADHD my entire personality. And I see a lot of people on social media, they're like, ADHD does not have to be your entire personality. What if it is? What if I had no idea for the first 20 years of my life that something that makes me the way I am exists? And it's understudied, under talked about, especially in women. And I can't help but make it my entire personality sometimes. And I think people owe us that patience. First of all, butt out. Let me do what I need to do because I was without this for so long, without this information that is so helpful to me. And now I'm so excited about it. And it's one of my favorite things to learn about because it's me. It's helping me learn about myself and gain confidence in the way that my brain works. And so, you know what? ADHD is going to be my personality trait, at least for the time being, at least until I grasp enough of an understanding of it to not feel like I'm falling apart every day. we can be vulnerable without being embarrassed because this is who we are. So anyways, my therapist told me about ADD Attitude magazine, and it's basically this magazine all about ADHD. And it's not just about ADHD in children or ADHD in boys. It's about women with ADHD, adults with ADHD. There's articles for parents with children who have ADHD or people who have partners with ADHD. So I really recommend going to this source if you have any questions. I've been doing a lot of research about the emotional effects of ADHD recently. This article is called Exaggerating Emotions: How and Why ADHD Triggers Intense Feelings. Just a few days ago. It was about 10 p.m. and I was just having a complete, what felt like a mental breakdown, but so much more than that. I was like, why am I feeling this way? And so I Googled it. I Googled it, of course, and I found this article by Thomas Brown, and he's got a PhD. It's medically reviewed. That's why I love this resource. Everything is like medically reviewed, and they actually refer to people who have ADHD. They make sure that their viewers and the people who are reading this are actually needing this information. And so, what this article talks about is that emotional challenges in ADHD, especially in adults, is not ever mentioned. So, the current diagnostic criteria for ADHD doesn't mention problems with emotions. Yet, it says recent research reveals that those with ADHD have significantly more difficulty with low frustration tolerance, impatience, hot temper, and excitability. We also have this thing where our emotions are just so strong and intense. And this is because it says challenges with emotions start in the brain itself. It's the working memory impairments of ADHD that allow a momentary emotion to become too strong. And so it floods the brain with this one intense emotion, where at other times, this person with ADHD would seem insensitive or unaware of emotions of others. If I am in a conversation with someone and they say or do one thing that is a little off to me, say they hesitate before answering, I'll be asking my sister, "Oh, do you like my outfit today?" She'll hesitate. That hesitation is going to flood my brain with this intense emotion of, I don't even know how to label the emotion, maybe embarrassment, um, just low self-esteem. It'll shatter my confidence. I'll be like, "Oh, she thinks I'm ugly. Oh, I am ugly. This isn't a cute outfit. I should just wear sweatpants. Everyone else is so much better at this than me." Those are the things that will go through my head. When really all she needed was a second to think about it and a second to think, "Well, yeah, that looks really nice on you." But to me, I'm already over it. The clothes are already off. I've already hung up and I put sweatpants on and I'm in my bed. Whereas other times, um, people with ADHD might be my sister in that situation. They might hesitate and be like, yeah, you look really nice in that outfit. By the time that flood of emotion hits our brain, we will have this overly emotional reaction and response. And it's where this momentary emotion, that one little 2-second hesitation that made me feel less confident in my appearance, it'll take up the entire space and room in my head. And I won't be able to think about anything else. I won't be able to go to class that day and focus because I'll be like, "Oh, I'm ugly." And I laugh because it sounds silly, but it's true. There's this thing called rejection sensitive dysphoria. That kind of explains that little moment of hesitation that I was talking about with that phone call with my sister. That little bit of uncertainty in her reaction made me interpret it as she was criticizing me. And so I'll just become so defensive and I'll be so quick to feel rejected or feel disapproved. And I'll become argumentative. I'll bottle up that feeling and become extremely anxious. Sometimes I would even avoid my sister. I would put my sweatpants on and get in bed and I'm not leaving because I don't feel good about myself. And that would be giving in to avoidance. I want to avoid being perceived by people because of my fear of being perceived as ugly or that fear of standing out, even though none of these things make sense. And that's the thing about ADHD is that when I think these things, I know I'm not being rational, and then that makes me even more mad, and that makes me feel even more crazy because I know I'm not being rational, and if I know I'm not being rational, why can't I just be rational? And so it's this whole domino effect that makes me get carried away with this emotion. With ADHD, our brains can't regulate our emotions, and our brains can't distinguish between dangerous threats or minor problems. Our perceptions can just be immediately thrown into panic mode, even though it might just be a minor inconvenience. And then after this reaction, I will become so guilty and my self esteem takes a hit and I become sad for sometimes up to 2 days after I have this emotional outburst. I get so frustrated and all my emotion just came out in one huge burst. And so I'll have such low energy and self-esteem for a couple days. And then sometimes the next day it's like I can't even get up and out of bed to start. This is because our emotions motivate action. This says that many people with untreated ADHD, which was me for about 20 years, can readily mobilize interest only for activities offering very immediate gratification, and they tend to have severe difficulty in activating and sustaining effort for tasks that offer rewards over the long term. I have a way harder time trying to motivate myself to cook dinner rather than motivating myself to go pick up McDonald's down the street because it's activating that motivation for that long-term goal. Even though eating meal that I cook is going to be way better, it's going to have much more value to me, but it's so much effort and it's such a long-term goal that I just can't see that. And then we also have problems having those reward recognizing circuits in the brain, like anticipating pleasure or registering satisfaction. So I know that I love going to class. I love participating. I love listening to my professors. But if I'm at home and I just woke up and I'm feeling this low self esteem and I'm just tired, then I'm going to have a hard time even remembering that class is valuable. I have fun there and the satisfaction is paid off. I won't remember that because it's a new day and everything yesterday does not exist to me anymore. This article also talks about working memory and the emotional energy needed to help us organize or sustain focus and self regulate. So, because people with ADHD don't have the same working memory as a neurotypical minded individual, we are more disorganized. We lose our temper and we procrastinate. Because there are so many emotional challenges of ADHD that are either understudied or kind of just like brushed off of our shoulder, it really creates problems for us, especially in education. I think one of the biggest problems for me and my schooling is that I'm so scared and anxious and sad and angry and frustrated sometimes that I can't go to class. There's been times where I start walking to class and I'll cry because I feel like I'm so overwhelmed that I can't possibly be a good student right now. I'll start telling myself things like, oh, the professor knows that I'm such a bad student. I bet all of my peers are like, wow, I can't believe she's missing another day of school. Even though if I was sick, if I had the flu, I wouldn't be going to school and they would be thanking me because no one wants me to give them the flu. But because it's this internal chronic condition, this ADHD and anxiety, I just feel extremely guilty about it. I'll talk down to myself about it so much to the point where even if I do make it to class, I might have to leave because I'll just start crying and then I can't learn anything. ADHD can have these effects on our educational pursuits, but not everyone knows why. And one established commonality of people with ADHD is having high potential but feeling completely stunted and hopeless. We know we have high potential, but something is just holding us back. It's like a wall. And I think that wall is everything about ADHD that we don't talk about, especially the emotional effects. I think my experience in school with undiagnosed ADHD has a direct impact on my ability to feel confident as a college student and also as a person. ADHD can make learning so frustrating, not only because of all those emotional aspects that I just talked about, but also because of those first symptoms from my initial Google search, like disorganization or hyperfixation, lack of focus, lack of motivation. All of those things can make ADHD so debilitating that it drives some of us to just give up. I almost gave up in high school. I found this article called The Surprising Statistics of ADHD in Education. I don't know who is surprised by this. I'm definitely not surprised. It says that children with ADHD generally fall behind in class compared to students who don't have ADHD. It also says that between 32 and 35% of ADHD teens, so I think they're talking about high school students in this, are more likely to drop out of school before graduating high school compared to 15% of teens who don't have a disorder such as ADHD. So I don't know why it says surprising statistics of ADHD because I'm not surprised. I wanted to give up. I didn't want to learn in high school. The most unmotivated I ever felt was in high school. The most scared and anxious and the lowest self-worth that I ever had was in high school. And I think it's because of my experience as an undiagnosed ADHDer and just being in an educational facility that didn't really care about that at all. I also found another article that says college students with ADHD are less likely to achieve academic success and more likely to experience psychological and emotional difficulties. And I'm here to talk about that. Why are we less likely to achieve academic success? If we have this high potential, and if ADHD is this amazing superpower, then why are we less likely to achieve this academic success? I want to talk about it and I want to get through it together because I'm a college student right now. I'm about to finish up my senior year and I'm about to finish up my bachelor's degree. And I want to keep going. I want to get my master's, and I am so scared that I am going to be one of those numbers, one of those college students with ADHD that don't achieve their academic success, that fall behind, and that don't reach their potential. I don't want to be that, and I don't want you to be that. I want you to reach your potential. I want you to go through education and be excited and encouraged, because it's hard to feel that way, especially when schools are designed for the neurotypical student, especially when ADHD is so understudied and underdiagnosed. I just I just want learning to be fun again. I just want to feel as excited as I was to learn in kindergarten. I want to feel as confident as I was walking into my 5th grade classroom when the teachers were encouraging me. My philosophy about teaching is that if you can only teach one archetype of brain, if you can only teach neurotypical students, then you are not a good teacher. And you should not teach in a public school. If you are one of the teachers who don't know how ADHD affects the learning process, or even just how we feel when we approach learning, if you don't understand that, or if you don't feel a need to understand that, then why are you teaching? I think that if my teachers were more educated about neurodiversity, then I think a lot of people who didn't finish high school, and I think a lot of people who didn't go on to college, probably would be significantly more encouraged to keep going with their education. I want to know your experience with ADHD in school. For a really long time, I felt very alone in my journey, and I don't want to feel like that anymore, and I don't want you to feel like that either. So if you want to, and if you have time, I would love for you to share your story in the comments. I really want to read it. I think we could all learn a lot from each other. I want to gain a sense of belonging that for so long I've been craving. And I feel like with that sense of belonging in this community, I think we can also gain confidence and make learning fun again. So let me know what your ADHD makes you feel like when you approach learning and education. What was your experience like? And what ADHD symptoms do you feel like had the most effect on your experience? Also, what do you wish was different in high school or college? What do you think would have made learning fun and easier for you? Because that's what I want to talk about in this podcast. I want to have a community where we can navigate this terrifying world of education together, because really, we're the only ones who understand what it's like. With all this medical information that we haven't yet learned, that we haven't yet studied, we're the only ones who can help each other gain understanding of our brains and feel better about ourselves. So let's do that. Let's talk about it. Also, thank you for listening to my first episode, guys. The second one is also out. Just saying.